Hello and welcome back to another episode of the New Homes podcast. We've got a really exciting episode for you today, talking about everything related to play and how we can integrate that on our developments. Joining me are two very special guests. Really delighted to welcome Helen Dodd, who's Professor of Child Psychology at the University of Exeter.
Great, thanks for having me.
No problem. And of course, back to the podcast, Kevin Parker, our Group Master Planning Director at Redrow. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Good to have you here. Kevin, can you just remind everyone who's a new sort of listener or viewer to the show, your role at Redrow and how you get involved in our developments?
Yeah, I'm Group Master Planning Director at Redrow. So with my small team, we work closely with all of our regional businesses across the country on master plans, layouts and design codes. And really the objective is to make sure all of our new developments are as good as they possibly can be from a placemaking perspective. So we're delivering great places to live and a great quality of life and places that are great for health and well-being.
Great. And of course, we're going to be talking about how we can make sure play is right at the heart of that.
That's right, yes.
Brilliant. And Helen, can you tell me a bit more about your role, how you got involved in that field and how you've been working with Redrow?
Yeah, so I'm Professor of Child Psychology at the University of Exeter. My background is in children's mental health, so understanding, why children have problems with their mental health and what we can do to prevent children from getting to the point where they, are having serious difficulties.
Yeah.
And really thinking about kind of young children and families and how we can support them. And about, 5 or 6 years ago, I sort of realised that play was really crucial to this, mostly because I became a parent myself and I was watching my children and play is just so much of what children do. But really when we're thinking about children's mental health, people weren't really talking about play. So I then applied for some funding and I have this 7-year kind of fellowship to look at the role of play in prevention of mental health problems in children.
Fantastic. Okay, that's going to be really interesting. Can't wait to find out more. Kevin, it's great to be on location. Can you tell us a bit more about where we are and what's going on at this site?
Yeah, so today we're at Frenchay Park. This is quite an interesting site actually. It was formerly a hospital, so it's what we call a brownfield site that we've redeveloped over the last 7 years. To deliver 500 homes and a new primary school and a whole series of destinations and new places within that. So the tennis courts you see behind you here are new. We've delivered that. We've delivered the destination play park that's behind there. We've restored the Lime Tree Avenue that was a car park for the hospital and that's now a main pedestrian and cycle route. We have restored allotments, woodland trail, outdoor gym, trim trails, play on the way. And all of it connected through a network of green routes and spaces that are safe to walk and cycle. So it feels already, it's not finished yet, we've got one more phase to complete, but already it feels like a thriving community, a bustling community. There's lots of activity and lots going on. And as I say, it'll be 500 homes and a new school when it's finished.
Fantastic. Well, turning to play, I think one of the things that struck me thinking about it and some of the conversations we were having just earlier, it's so linked to nostalgia, isn't it? And, you can't help but almost smile thinking back to your own childhood and elements of play. Can you give me a sense, both of you, of what that was like growing up for you? Helen, if we start with you.
Yeah, so I grew up in a village in Derbyshire. We were really lucky because our garden had a gate that opened out onto a field. It was a farmer's field where they grew crops, so I'm not sure we were supposed to be playing in there, but we spent quite a lot of time playing out there and kind of building dens in the hedges and things like that. We also spent quite a lot of time just kind of riding our bikes up and down on the pavement outside the house. Because it was a village, there wasn't always a lot of other children around, so I spent a lot of time playing with my brother. And then as we got older and could kind of travel a little bit further, then we'd walk to kind of the play area in the park and tennis courts and things as well. And then we got to sort of see more children a little bit.
Okay. And how about you, Kevin?
Yeah, it's quite different for me because I grew up in London, so North London, so very sort of urban until I was about 8. But similarly, I remember sort of riding up and down on the pavement and going around the block on the pavement. And the play area for us was a bit of a walk. So again, that was a sort of highlight of the week on Sunday, going over to the play area. But there's nothing green immediately in the sort of the streets around me, very sort of urban. But very fond memories, and always found a way to explore the area on my bike. And I think up to the age of 8, I was actually going some quite quite distant from the home when I think about it, actually, compared to what would probably be acceptable now, which is quite interesting. But and then as I got older, we moved to sort of lower density areas where there was more greenery and more opportunity to explore and play spaces nearby.
Yeah. It's interesting you said that about going around the block. That's the same. We would at first only allow down the street and back, and then as we got a bit older, right, you can go around the block. And I had forgotten about that kind of phrase.
It's quite a big thing to be suddenly around.
Yeah, you're allowed to go, and it wasn't really a block in any way, but it was a loop that allowed us to go out a bit further and venture from home.
And you've suggested that's changed a bit, Kevin. I think we're all parents. My kids are fairly young. I've got a 3 and a 6-year-old, and they're certainly not playing out at the minute. Is that how old are your kids, and what are they doing?
Mine have grown up now. They're 17 and 19 now, but we moved to an area that was right next to a play area when they were very young, so they have had that access to immediate play, and so it's for them it's been quite good, so that they can sort of almost play and be in eyesight of us from the home, which is fantastic. But there's definitely a trend where children aren't going out as much as they were, and we saw that from the research that parents feel that their children aren't going out and aren't as active as much as they were when they were younger. And I think at Redrow we want to try and do whatever we can to try and reverse that, to try and introduce play, a bit like here, where we've tried to introduce opportunities for play and green space almost close to every single doorstep. So it's not just one destination, you're sort of integrating it with the homes to create that sort of easy opportunity for play and exploration and adventure, and for children to use their imagination. And here we have this completely unfenced. All of these trees are accessible, so from the play area you can go and explore the trees and the woodland, which is, I think, that's really what creating opportunities for play is about, rather than just almost engineered sort of features for people to go to. It's thinking about a sort of a more integrated and natural approach to integrating opportunities for play.
You mentioned the research we undertook. So we surveyed 2,000 parents and asked them their own experiences and those of their children. And 2/3 of parents actually said their kids don't play out as much as they did, and that actually rose to 3/4 of parents over 50. Is that your experience, Helen, with your kids as well, and does that surprise you?
Yeah, so my children are 7 and 10. So where we moved about 2 years ago. So before that, where we lived, there were a lot of kind of playgrounds, but not a lot of space for play, as you talked about. So there was kind of, you could go there and you could play on that playground, but there wasn't really much access to kind of green space or spaces where they could just be kind of a bit more creative with their play. And we knew that we didn't want them to grow up in that environment. We wanted them to have a bit more freedom. So we moved 2 years ago and now they've got lots of access to kind of green space and things, which is really nice for just supporting that play as they get older as well. Because I think often when you've got like a small play area, it's perfect when your child is 2 or 3 years old. Mm-hmm. But when they get to kind of 6, 7, 9, 10, there's nothing for them to do there anymore.
Okay.
So I think, from my personal experience, I think that we do need to be thinking really carefully about space for children to play. And then in terms of research, your findings around parents telling us that children aren't playing out as much absolutely chime with what we found in our research. So we asked parents what age they were allowed out by themselves, and what age they were going to let their child out by themselves. And parents told us that they went out independently from about age 9. So, going down to the park by yourself or going to call for friends or something. But their children wouldn't be going out by themselves until they were 11.
Oh, okay.
So within that generation, that's 2 years of kind of freedom and exploration and socialising with friends that children now are not getting, that our generation were getting.
Is there any indication of what the causes are of that? Is that people just more worried about fear-mongering in the media and all that kind of stuff? Or
Yeah, and I think there's lots of different things. And from our work, and it also is reflected in your survey as well, parents are worried about roads, road safety, and that bit is understandable, right? Roads are busier than they've ever been before, and there's not opportunity to make a mistake on a road. If a child missteps, then that's going to be problematic. So I think that's a big thing, is thinking about how we provide spaces for children that are safe from cars. But then, also alongside that is access. So I think in your survey, parents said that a lot of them didn't have a space that they could go to. for their play. They didn't have an open space or a green space that, a kind of multifunctional space where they could go to as a family. So partly it's about access and provision of those spaces, partly it's about safety, with road safety, I think, being a big thing there.
Okay. Kevin, what's the Redrow perspective on road safety and children, and how do we design safe roads on our developments?
Well, I think that was one of the interesting findings from the research that said that 21% of people have considered moving to a quieter street or a cul-de-sac primarily for a safer place to play for their children. And we do, where we can, the examples of it here, we deliver shared surface community streets, as we call them, or cul-de-sacs, which are designed without pavement. So it's a shared surface where pedestrians and cyclists have priority and cars are deliberately then forced to slow down. And I think on quiet, smaller, well-defined streets, that can work really well, and it does create a space that is safer for maybe older children to play or kick a ball around or something like that. And you're creating activity in the street and creating a sense of community. So that's what we aim for wherever we can on sort of quieter streets. And we do find that those quieter streets, those cul-de-sacs, are very popular places to live, and we know our customers value that. So that's one of our sort of key principles about streets for life, is to sort of create not just roads for cars, but to actually think about places, streets for places for people and communities to sort of thrive. And I think with careful design, I think that is possible. I think we can do that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and it's also, so if I just pick that up, on your survey, when you looked at the different places that children play and where their parents played, and the biggest decrease is in kind of street play and play locally, yes, right? Yeah. So they might still be going to a park to play, but they're not doing that kind of doorstep play that we might have done more as children.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the really interesting things that stood out to me was on the type of play from the research. So those wonderful traditional games that I remember playing, like British Bulldog, hide and seek, hopscotch, all that kind of stuff, is on the decline. And in fact, the only thing that seemed to be increasing was football, according to the research. Does that surprise you, Helen, that kind of shift to more organised, rules-based play?
Yeah, it does absolutely chime with the research that we've done that shows, I think, parents feel more comfortable somehow with kind of taking their children to an activity, or children perhaps, just more familiar now with engaging in games where there are clear rules like football. And obviously football in this country has a whole, presence, doesn't it? And whereas hopscotch doesn't.
Yeah, sadly.
But obviously, organised sport is fantastic for children, but children also need opportunity to just be creative, to explore things for themselves. Earlier we were watching a young child just picking up kind of mud off the path and watching it blow in the wind, just learning about the world and having opportunity to express themselves. And organised sport doesn't give space for that, right, because it has a structure around it. So yes, football's great, but children also need opportunity to just be playing more freely and that space to just explore who they are and how the world works and explore nature and things like that as well.
No, that makes sense. And I mean, Kevin, even things like football can be under threat. I know there's been a rise of no ball games type signage that you see around developments and urban spaces. Is that something that's going on at Redrow, and what's our approach to that?
I mean, I think the opposite is what we're trying to do, is we're almost trying to give permission to play. So when we're thinking about design from the start, we integrate play in the overall sort of placemaking strategy. And I think if you don't do that, if it's badly designed, you're thinking about play as an afterthought, that's when you end up with no ball signs because you thought you put it in the wrong place. But I think if you think about it from a holistic point of view, we should be able to encourage play wherever possible. So it feels like it's you've got permission to play, and it's welcoming and it's safe. And as Helen said, there's opportunities for sort of interacting with nature and a bit more sort of challenging play as well. But that needs to be thought about from the outset. It doesn't just happen. You have to sort of embed that in the design from the first principles, if you like.
Brilliant, okay. Helen, you started off talking about mental health and that link that led you to explore play more closely. Can you just explain to us a bit more what are the benefits for kids really getting to play? What's it doing for them?
Yeah. So when I talk about play, particularly in relation to mental health, I talk about what we call free play, which is where the child decides what they're going to do, when they're going to do it, who they're going to do it with, and when they're going to stop.
Yep.
So it's not an adult coming along and saying, right, let's do this now. It's really, led by the child. And when we give children a space to play in that way, they will use play to explore their emotions, to express how they feel about things. And one of the things that I'm really interested in is giving children a space to explore risk-taking a bit in their play. So again, if we give children a space, they will explore a little bit of risk-taking, right? So I'm not talking about, extreme risks and children getting hurt, but children are pretty good at self-preservation, right? They don't want to hurt themselves any more than we do. So if we give them the space, then they might be a bit more, you talked about challenge just now. They might challenge themselves a bit. They might decide they're going to, jump from this stone to this stone, or see how far they can, do cartwheels for, or, and one of the things I'm really interested in my work is when we give children a space to do that, all this learning happens, right? Because they're experiencing, their heart racing and their palms sweating and, butterflies in their tummy, but they're doing it in a playful environment, so it feels good, right? And they're going to experience those anxiety feelings at some point in their lives, whether it's when they go and sit their GCSEs or whether it's, when they go to a new school. They're going to experience them. So we want children to have opportunity to learn about them through their play before they get to that point where actually anxiety is, a real thing and is going on, so that they don't feel so overwhelmed by it when it happens.
Fascinating. And Kevin, I suppose it's not just play and the wonderful benefits that's got for children. We've, of course, got tennis playing around us in the background as well. That wider things to do philosophy for people living on and around a development is very much part of the Redrow 8, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about designing destinations and things to do for all ages. That's how I would put it. So here we have an outdoor gym that's for older sort of teenagers and adults, trim trail for adults, tennis courts, allotments, which are an important way to keep healthy and good for health and well-being. So I think it's embedding destinations and opportunities for activities for all age groups, and simple things like walking loops or running loops that can easily be integrated. But it gives you a reason to go, if you want to go outside the house for a walk or a run or walk the dog or whatever. It's those sort of simple design interventions that can make all the difference, really. And then if you have all that activity, you have an opportunity to create a sense of community because people are meeting new people or interacting, and the whole place has a bit like today, you have a sense of activity. And I think without that, if you don't embed those destinations, there's a risk that you end up with a sort of relatively sterile sort of place where it's just housing and there's nothing to do. So it's really about creating a sense of community and building that sort of quality of life and as I say, health and well-being as well.
Yeah, I can really see that. I was struck by the number of people that talk about making new friends and meeting neighbours as a result of being with their kids and going to those play spaces. And certainly on my development, there are those play areas and you can see everyone come together, and they do really add life like that. And Helen, I suppose it's not, even if you don't have kids, actually having kids are on any development, any area, regardless, right? They're going to be playing, so better that they've got areas that are suited to them.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I think it's partly about making sure that there are things for children to do and that they're entertained, because children will find something to do, and it may not be what adults want them to do if we haven't been thoughtful about the design. But also I totally agree that, when we design spaces that are good for children, then they're good for everybody. This space that we're in right now is a really nice green space that children could play in. Yeah. But equally, you could sit on the bench and read your book, or you could come and play tennis, or, so we shouldn't be thinking about, when we're designing for children, we'll just pop a play area in and that's children done, tick. We should be thinking about community spaces that are good for children, but they're also good for the community. Yeah. And when children are out, parents are out. And I know you already mentioned in your play report, parents said that they made friends with their neighbours because the children played together, right? So if children are out and parents are out and they know one another, then you have this better sense of community. You also have a safer community. Right, the more people who are out and using the space, the safer people feel. Yeah. So even if you're somebody who doesn't have children, most people want to feel safe where they live and they want to feel connected and part of an active community. So I think if you can design spaces that encourage people out, then you get this sense of community, and it's better for children, but it's better for everybody. Yeah,
and you almost get a sort of snowball effect because there are more people out, then it feels safer, so then you get even more out as well, so you get more activities.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, we're now going to take a short break to have a look at a clip of a new challenge we're launching on social media. So over to you, RJ.
Yo guys, I'm here with Redrow at Collindale Gardens in London. I'm here to take part in the Redrow Ball Games Challenge. Let's get into some skills. Alright guys, so you've seen what I can do. Now it's time for you lot to show me what you've got. If you think you can top my skills, read the caption below to take part in the challenge. Whether you're a team or an individual, feel free to take part. Good luck.
Thanks very much, RJ. Some amazing skills on show there. Yes, of course, we are launching our ball game challenge. That's going live across all social media channels, so do give us a follow, get involved, and we can't wait to see what skills you have. Are you guys going to be taking part in the competition?
Yeah, definitely. I don't think I can match RJ's skills, but I'll be giving it a go.
Good, good. Well, there's prizes up for grabs for individuals and teams, so do take a look at that as well. It's not the only thing we're doing in terms of the wider campaign around play that we're looking at and our focus on it over the summer. We're also getting involved with our hunt for a junior playmaker. So Kevin, can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, we've gone out to children living on Redrow developments and asked them to design their ideal play area. We've had lots of entries and some fantastic entries, I have to say. Some really colourful designs and quite sort of clever designs actually in terms of the thought that's gone into them and the different play equipment. And I think the ones for me that stood out are the ones where they thought not just about play equipment but about nature, so about incorporating trees or wildflower meadows around the edge to get that sort of interest, provide some shading, and some places that are a little bit more interactive, I suppose, in terms of nature.
Great, okay. And is that the kind of thing we've done before, that going out and seeking the opinion of kids and local
We have, yeah, and it's something that we would like to do more of, but at our Tudor Meadows development in Sawston in the South Midlands, we actually worked with local school children. There's a school right next to the development, so we held a workshop with the school children, so we taught them about placemaking principles and what makes a great place. And then we asked them to design their own play area, their own ideal play area, so they came up with various designs, and then they were asked to choose from a list the ideal play equipment they'd like to see. And I'm pleased to say that development has picked up those designs, and we're actually delivering that through the 2 new play areas there. And that's a great example of sort of listening to local communities and tapping into that. I mean, they are effectively the experts in terms of designing play, so we should be doing more of it, but it's a fantastic example, and I can't wait to see that development come forward with those play areas that have been designed by local children.
Amazing. Is that something you've done before in your research, Helen, as well, to speak to children?
I think it's just so important, isn't it, that we include children in these conversations. And children are so creative. If we want to create something that's interesting and different, then talk to children and let them come up with some of those ideas. And if we're creating spaces for them, then we should be including them in that process and getting their views on what makes a good play space, what do they want. And often it's surprising. So they'll say things like, we want trees and shade and quiet spaces. And, they are wise beyond their years, often, young people. So.
Brilliant. And I think, I suppose it's one of the ways to get them thinking and talking about play. And I know it was one of the concerns that we had highlighted in the research by parents, is that idea that kids aren't as interested now. They may be spending more time on social media or playing video games. What kind of role does that play in their development, and how can parents combat that? Yeah,
and it's of course that's the case, right, compared to previous generation, multiple generations ago, people were not playing video games. Social media didn't exist. The internet didn't exist. So of course it's different now. But I think that, we need to be careful not to just kind of sit in nostalgia and think, oh, the good old days. But actually, this is the reality now. Children do spend much more time on screens, but so do all of us, right? We all spend more time on screens than we used to. And that's not necessarily the enemy, right? They're not going anywhere. And a lot of the time, children are doing things on screens which actually is really engaging, and if that's where their friends are and they're playing games on screens, maybe they're doing video calls with their friends, or they're talking to their friends, or they're playing them together, in and of themselves, video games or social media isn't the problem. The problem is if that takes away all of the outdoor active time when they would be playing. So, in the same way as we wouldn't give children, takeaway pizza every night of the week for dinner, we should make sure that children aren't just playing on screens and just playing video games. We want to balance that with physically active outdoor time in nature, time playing with friends, you know, in the real world. And kids tell us from our research that they want more time playing with friends, IRL as they put it, in real life. But we've got to make sure that the outdoor environment is enticing and interesting for them, because if every time they go out they're told don't be here, don't be there, or there's nowhere for them to go, then of course they're going to come back inside and carry on playing on their screens. So we need to make sure that outdoor spaces are inclusive, they have things for children and young people to be doing, they feel welcome in those spaces. If we expect them to put down, you know, their computer games and get outside.
Brilliant. Well, Kevin, on that note, what do you think is the main takeaway from your point of view, and what are we going to be doing differently going forward? Well,
I've learned a lot from Helen and from the other experts we've been talking to. And I think the main thing for me is thinking a new term for me, KFC playground, a sort of engineered kit, fence, carpet destination. And instead of doing that, thinking a bit more creatively and thinking about natural play, so thinking about tree trunks, boulders, integrating with nature, so being a lot more sort of opportunistic, I suppose, in terms of how we think about play when we're designing new places. But that's been the key lesson for me, I think, just being a little bit more creative in terms of how we think about new developments, now we embed play into the design of the space.
Great. And Helen, is there anything that's surprised you or that you've taken away from spending time working with Kevin and the Redrow team?
Yes, I think, you know, the thing that is exciting for me is that you guys are creating new spaces, right? And so much of the work I do, people tell us, you know, there isn't space for this, we can't travel there, we can't cross that road. And those things are barriers that are preventing children from playing. But if we can work together when we're thinking about designing new spaces and make sure that we're thinking about children and families from the get-go, then we can overcome some of those barriers. And it's really hard when things have already been built to try and kind of make them more child-friendly and better for children and families. But you have an opportunity to build that in from the initial design phase. So I think, you know, I'm really pleased that you're thinking about it. And, you know, there's some really nice examples already, like where we are now, but it's great to hear that, you know, you're not thinking, right, well, we're doing all that already. You're thinking, how can we do this better?
Brilliant. Well, thanks so much, both of you. I've really enjoyed our conversation today and taken a lot from it. So thank you very much. Hope you've enjoyed it too. If you want to find more things play related, there's a huge amount going on. So head to the Redrow website where you can download a copy of that play report that's got all the research that we've been talking about involved. We've also got lots of events coming up. There's a National Day of Play on the 2nd of August, so to celebrate that, there'll be activity taking place at a range of developments for the last weekend of July and the first weekend of August. Come down, pick up a play kit for the kids and find out more. And of course there's a ball game challenge, don't forget to get involved there. So thanks again, guys, and look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.